My name is George Lucas. Normally, Ed Noy would be up here. He's the president of the guild. He couldn't be here tonight, and he said, "Would you stand in for me?" So here I am. I'm part of the board of directors of the Minnesota Woodworkers Guild. There's a few other members of the board. Matt LeBeau, running over there. Let's see who else is here. It's a member of the board. Ron Austin, is he back there?
I'm here.
Oh, yeah, there you are. Hi, Ron. The board of directors is a group of 10 of us. We try to make things work. We're pretty enthusiastic. We're all woodworkers. I'd like to ask you to turn your cell phones so they're not going to make a bunch of noise. Is anyone here for their first monthly meeting of the Woodworkers Guild? Anybody else? Oh my gosh. You want to introduce yourself?
I'm John Steiner, St. Paul, 3 miles away.
Okay. We're glad you're here.
Thank you.
What made you come tonight?
My wife.
Said, get out of the house. Leave the house. I'm tired of you being around. Is that? Oh.
She's been really sick.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I got time.
Oh, okay. Okay. Some other hands in the back. Yes, sir.
Chris Wilson, West St. Paul. Working with my grandfather.
We're glad you're here. And there's somebody else back there, wasn't there? Yes, sir.
Jacob Ayers. First time got an email from him.
Super. And you, sir?
Doug Hansen. I've been cabinet maker for 20 years now, so but yeah, first time ever actually attending.
You could teach us some things, I'm sure. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I'm a new person in Minnesota, and before that I was in Alaska doing mostly mining tech, and now I am here to learn new stuff from more seasoned members of woodworking community.
Welcome. We're glad you're here. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Will Lewis. I'm doing woodworking probably longer than most have been born. I built things like musical instruments, houses, cabinet furniture, and books. Now retired.
A young guy like you retired?
I had that conversation for all the sawdust I can nail.
It's like that guy next to you that's another young guy, Roger.
I'm sorry, I'm also retired.
I'd like to mention, just to start off with, a few things that the Woodworkers Guild of Minnesota does. First of all, we have 43 or 44 supporters. Those supporters are retail outlets, wholesale outlets, various organizations that supply tools or wood or services for the woodworkers. They're on our website, and each one of those supporters will give you a discount or some special service. A lot of those supporters are wholesalers, where as a member of the Woodworkers Guild, you can go and buy, whereas member from the general community, they don't sell to. We have an account at a bunch of places, so you actually are going in as a Woodworkers Guild member using our account. You pay for it, but it's our account. I just saw something today. There's a place called Hardwoods out in Rogers, Minnesota, that is a wholesaler. And I saw an invoice come in from them to the guild, and a member had joined on the 6th of December, and on the 9th of December bought $500 worth of wood, which would probably cost $1,000 if you'd gone to a regular outlet. So he saved his money and then some. my function at the board of directors, I'm the supporters and sponsors kind of liaison. So I'm the one that goes around and talks to all these places, and we have some great supporters. Places like Rockler or Woodcraft, but also Metro Hardwoods or Service Grinding and Sharpening. All those things are supporters of the Guild. We also have a number of other activities. We just had an activity called the Woodworkers Expo. And Ron, would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Use the mic. The expo was in October, and we're still in resting mode, recovering from that. We think we had 2,000 people there, which was really good. We were really pleased with that. We had 70 participants. We're really pleased with that. So we just want to do it again. So we're working towards October 11th, which is the same weekend. We are penciled in, but it's not official until the fair board approves it, which would be in January. So we're telling tool vendors right now that, you know, we're striving for the 11th of October, but that's about as far as we'll go until probably the 1st of February. So.
Anybody here go to the expo this year? Was it good?
Absolutely.
I thought it was. It's an event we've had now going on for, I think this is our 6th time. So it's a new thing that we started a few years ago, and I think it's gone off very well. The next major event the Guild has is the Northern Woods Exhibition. Is Mike Johnson here? I didn't see him. The Northern Woods Exhibition is an exhibition for fine woodworking. A lot of you have exhibited there. It will be the 27th, 28th, 29th, and 30th of April at the Eden Prairie Center. This will be the 41st year we've had this. The registrations are going to be open in January. So if you'd like to have your piece of artwork, Roger, you gonna have something in it this year?
I am.
We hope to have
So no one else needs to bother.
I just happened to see Roger sitting there. I know he's.
I win everything every time.
That's our big spring event. Something else we're doing, we have a lot of, we call special interest groups. We call them SIGs. There are a number of SIGs. Roger actually has a design SIG that meets at Rockler in Maplewood. There's another design SIG. There's a SIG that is for making violins and guitars, a Slutier SIG. There's a box making SIG. There's a Windsor chair SIG. What am I missing? I think that's most of them.
But I'm getting conflicting information.
Say again?
I'm getting conflicting information on the SIGs. And the last meetings and some of the web activity indicate that they're full and closed. But I've talked to some people back here and a few other people, and they're like, well, if you ask the right person, you can get in. So who do I bribe?
Roger. There's one. They open up occasionally. I don't know if they're full right now, this particular moment or not.
How do mere mortals know? Northern Woods is a good time to sign up, assuming I'm in the country.
Well, I would say if it's a particular one that you're interested in, contact the person running that particular one, because, you know, they might have something between announcements. In between the last and the next announcement, something might open up in a bit. It just hasn't been announced yet. Or start. Yeah.
Mike Johnson's not here tonight. He's on the board of directors. If you remember that name, you can get his contact information on our website, and he will be able to answer that question a lot better than I can. That's his responsibility of the SIGs.
Okay, thank you.
A couple of quick announcements. The tuition reimbursement program. If you don't know it, we have a program where we offer $1,000 tuition reimbursement to 2 woodworkers every year to go to some woodworking school. To do that, you have to send us basically a note saying, here's where I want to go, here's why I want to go. And when you're complete of the school, we ask you to come in and tell us how it went to one of our monthly meetings. We have a couple of applicants. The due time, I think is at the end of March. End of March. So we got a little bit of time yet. The other thing I was going to say is we have a December 17th webinar on fixing materials. You want to talk about that, Matt? Oh, you don't? On our website, fixing mistakes. That'll be next week this time as a webinar. The January meeting is McFeely's talking about what kind of fasteners to use. Various kinds of fasteners. Any questions that I can try to answer? It's on our website. That's where I picked it up, actually. There's no questions. You want to do your door prize thing?
Yeah.
Well, I got to pick them.
You may have another ticket coming. Yeah. there may be another ticket.
Put it back in.
Well, you gotta take it back here. Anybody else?
Now I can pick a ticket. Okay. Okay. The last 4 numbers are 639, 639. Anybody got 639? Last 3 numbers on your ticket. Set of blades. Okay. Another one? Another ticket. The last 3 numbers are 644. 644. Ah, okay.
This is.
Oh, good. Square screws, right? The whole bag, right?
Yeah.
Last 3 numbers are 645. 645. Ah. Hmm? Now I'm going to turn it over to Matt LeBeau, who will take it from here.
Right, so now we're going to have Craig demonstrate how he made that beautiful ribbon chair, vacuum bagging outside the form. And go ahead, Craig.
All right. So tell me if I'm on. Okay, welcome. Double check with Matt. We're good? Audio? Okay. Craig Jentz, a little bit about me. I'm a retired corporate IT management guy. I managed people and projects and problems for 30 some years, but always did woodworking after hours because I loved it. I retired 7 years ago, and I have the fortune to have retired to heaven to be with all this great equipment, in particular, great shop mates like Richard in the back. So, so today, vacuum bagging outside the form. So this bench whippet was in Northern Woods. So what I wanted to do from an agenda perspective, first, what materials are used? And then before we get into vacuum bagging outside the form, we spent a little bit of time talking about what's the traditional way
inside the form, so we got to compare and contrast. Okay. And I've got the PowerPoint again. I'm a retired management guy, so I got to have a PowerPoint, right? So like I'm just like back in the group. So we got the PowerPoint, but then we'll do some demos as well. So from a wood perspective, really three things: any kind of big panels, bending ply, wiggle wood, that type of stuff. For Whippet and the other outside the forms, I get purchased commercially sliced veneer. If people don't know of Certainly Woods, you need to find them. They're outside of Buffalo, New York. So this is 16th inch sliced ash. These are 8-footers. The plies on the bench were 15-footers. So that's a big ass tree and even bigger ass veneer knife that's cutting that stuff. So I love this stuff. We can also do solid wood plies. We've got a power feeder on our resaw bandsaw, but regardless, resawing is always not a lot of fun. So typically would use the commercial veneer. It is available. From a materials perspective, glue, almost always use 2-part urea resin. We love this Unibond 800 from Vacuum Pressing Industries or Systems. They're the same people that make the blue pumps. It's got long open time, so this thing can be, you can be messing around and have stuff in the form squishing around for up to 6 hours before it starts to set. There is absolutely no creep once it sets. If you have any kind of a lamination under stress, other glues over time, they'll creep, and you'll actually feel telegraph lines between your plies as things try to get back to the original shape. This is really good at filling gaps, and it's easily tintable. So for example, they sell the powdered catalyst. It comes in this neutral kind of almond color, but then whenever I'm doing walnut, they've got walnut color. So you just mix that in and you're great from a color match perspective. And I think you can also, we can dye it as well, right, Richard? Can tint it? Might be able to. Charlie?
Question, there are other urea type glues that just add water to.
And I have used those in the past. There was a company out of Cleveland, Custom Pack, and you added water. It behaves the same as this, but the downside is when you're doing straight up veneering, you get swelling because it's water-based. Where this, you won't get swelling. For laminations, it's not that big of a deal, but if you're veneering a big wide table, you're going to get a lot of growth when it gets wet. And this stuff is water soluble too, so it's not nasty to work with. Unibond 1 is Unibond's version of a cold press veneer glue. So we use Unibond 1 when we're just straight up veneering, but we never use it for lamination because it is a PVA, I believe. And so typical tight bond. We'll occasionally use PVA only if it's something that's not under stress. So if I'm bending some bending ply and there's nothing that's going to make it want to straighten out, PVA is fine. Of course, you got to have fast assembly time because the stuff's going to set quick. So downside, you don't have a lot of open time and it will creep under stress. Okay, so that's the materials. Then inside the form, I don't even know if this is the right term. It's outside the form is the other way, so I just figured it's got to be inside the form, right? But I'm not really sure. So the typical way. So how that's done is you make a big form and you put your laminations over the form. That goes in a vacuum bag. This one is made where the bag, it's not on a platen. The bag just encapsulates the arch. Most of ours, if you go back in the back corner, you'll see a big rack full of forms that hopefully someday will get reused. But the reality is They don't always. And it's just there's a lot of work in making the forms. There's as much work typically making the forms as it is doing the lamination. The good side of this stuff is you will get exact forming and you can do consistent, repeatable, because you know it's going to be exactly the same way every single time. And if there's any spring back, you can calculate that. It'll have the same spring back every single time. So great for that kind of stuff. Typically only for bending in one direction. So whippet is bent all kinds of directions. Here we usually go in one direction. In particular, bending ply, it only bends in one direction. It doesn't go the other way. And we use solid forms with bending ply and solid wood forms. The biggest downside is you got to make the forms. So, for example, this form is for that arch table. I made 6 of those tables, 3 for here in Minneapolis, 1 for customer in New Orleans, 1 for in Portland, and 1 in San Diego. And I think of the 6 tables, I made 3 or 4 forms because, of course, oh, I want mine to be 4 inches bigger or 2 inches taller. So, you know, the downside is it's a lot of work to make the forms. Questions? Mostly, this one's solid. Typically, we'll do. Oh, I'm sorry. The question was, what do you make the forms out of? This one is solid, so I've got 4 pieces of MDF and 3 pieces of brick laid construction 2x4 lumber. Cut one out, and then with the pattern cutter, router, bitter, shaper, just duplicate, 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 duplicate. This guy is solid. Typically, if you look back on our rack, most of the forms are Richards, and most of them, Richard, you've got 3/4 MDF with what, like an inch, inch and a half gap between the ribs? Yeah. Yeah, and I actually, when I first started doing this, I did a form where I think it had like 4-inch gaps on the ribs, and it was sitting on my particle board platen, and there was enough pressure that it punched the particle board platen up into the form. So you really got to make them robust. But if you have the form, it's rock solid way to go. Super, nothing to worry about. You're going to get exactly what you think you're going to get. So examples here, I've got bending ply, arch on the arch, this dresser, the fronts of the drawers are all curved, and those are out of solid resawn maple with the lacewood veneer. On the smaller side, you know, legs on a music stand, the chair back, all kind of similar construction made on a solid form or a rib form. So that's inside the form, if that's a term. Now, outside the form. So the laminations are put in a bag and it's bent around a scaffold. And will pull the scaffold out. It allows for freeform. You can do whatever you want or however wood will bend, you can make it go that way. You can make things that it would be impossible. Like that bench, there's no way I can make a form to make that curve on the bench. And even if I was a CAD guy, I can't imagine making a form. So it's super creative. And it allows bending in multiple directions because I can take the wood, I can bend it up, I can twist it. You know, you've got, you know, nature's unlimitedness there. It's ideal for solid plies. I guess you could use it for bending plies. I haven't tried it. I mean, I could take a bending ply and maybe get maybe not, a little bit of a twist. Because, you know, again, this is made more for bending in one direction. So I did this whippet bench. I had so much fun with this that, well, first I got to talk a little bit about this. This was a cooperative this is the first time I've ever done this. And nobody in the shop has done this. We've done all kinds of lamination the old way, but never this way. And my shop mates, Jake and Jason and Richard, we spent a week playing around with this, where coming down and, you know, I'd have these plies wrapped in the form, and literally every morning Richard was like, ooh, Craig, last night I was in bed and I thought about, we should try doing this. And then our shop mate Jake's up in the top and he's like, ooh, come look at it from above. Because it was, you see things from different angles, and this was so much fun. It was such a super creative, you know, sky's the limit type project. So I did that, and that was so much fun. I did a coffee table. So similar version. I have from Northern Woods, I have a commission for a coffee table. And this was like a prototype just to prove that I could do it. So I did a coffee table, and that wasn't enough fun. So I did a lamp with all that same whippy, bendy, let nature go the way nature wants to go approach. So from a design perspective, you know, how am I going to draw that? I can't. So what I do, typically I make models regardless of what I do. I start out with sketches, I end up with a model, I show that to the customer, and then from the models to scale, I scale it up and I build the real thing. So I made a model for a coffee table. This is the one now, the commission I'm working on. So I'll hold it up so you can see it, and you can get it up closer later, but I took aluminum roofing flashing, you know, along the gutters, and I just tin snipped strips, and then I just bend away. And what's great about the metal is it holds its form. I started doing it when I did the whippet bench, it was paper, and that was like, well, that's kind of useless because it just kind of flops. But this stays in place, hot melted together. And then of course you get classy and you make your little plexiglass top, and now you got your table, okay? David.
I don't want to get ahead of you, but as far as the tabletop, same with the bench, but with the tabletop, what do you do to make sure that you've got a level plane at the top?
We'll get to that when we get to the scaffolding, because that's the key, David, to the reference points on the scaffolding. So this lets me figure out roughly what I want, but it's Mother Nature. So I can't say I'm going to get that exactly. I'm going to try for it. Another advantage of this is I build it to scale. So I'll make my longest strip the length of my plies. So now I know that I'm not designing something that's bigger than what I have material for. So this approach really works fantastic. I think models in general work fantastic.
How long were your plies on the bench?
15 footers.
Repeat the question.
Oh, the question was how long were the plies on the whippet bench? They were 15 footers. So there are 16, it's one ribbon, 16 plies thick, 1/16 an inch thick. So it's an inch thick altogether. They're 15 feet long. And oh, they were roughly this kind of 6 inches. What?
A lot of seams you had to put up.
No seams whatsoever. Continuous one piece front to back and no edge to edge. Nothing. I'll say this is like, and you'll see when we get into it, it's embarrassingly simple. It's really not that hard. Compared to like making all those forms, it is pretty simple. From a
$1 per board foot basis, is this stuff ridiculously expensive?
I don't think so. And particularly, like, you'll see a bunch hanging in my shop in the corner, because this stuff is really hard to keep rolled up because it's so thick. At Certainly Woods, you can buy the end of the flitch. So they'll have the price. And they say, if you buy the whole thing, it's 30% off. Well, usually it's like, if I buy the whole thing for an extra couple of bucks, I get 3 times the material that I would if I'm just buying, or twice the material if I'm just buying it by the individual leaf. mean, I don't know what the material cost. The bench probably had, what's your guess, Richard? 350? Yeah, of material. And that's,
Is it always that width?
no, it's random. It's a tree. So it's whatever, it's whatever. And they show it on the website. They have all the dimensions. And so you pick what you need. Yeah, which is pretty reasonable. I mean, considering if I would have taken a board and I would have resawn it and spent all day resawing and like screwed up how many boards, and then I would have trashed a blade for sure. And it's no stress. It shows up in the mail. Aha, I have a solution, right? The what makes this work is I got to grab some stuff here. You got to get the special plastic bag. So again, another plug for vacuum pressing. This is the bag that I bought, 17 feet, 4 inches long, 16 inches wide. It's a vinyl bag versus the polyurethane. So like our vacuum press in the back by the garage door, that's a polyurethane bag. It's meant for like using it every single day. This is plenty fine for what I'm doing. And that was 185 bucks.
Did you order a custom size?
Nope, that's standard. They have custom sizes. This was the biggest standard size they had, David. And they've got shoulders, of course, and you can get they'll make whatever you want. And I've seen videos of people making their own, they'll buy the plastic or glue it or caulk the seams, but 185 bucks, just buy it, to me that we'll get multiple uses obviously out of this. And then you need the evacuation netting. We'll see this in the demo. That goes in the bag over the wood, so the air's got a path out. So now let's get into the scaffolding. So, okay, and I'm gonna grab this guy here. I covered it up because I didn't want people looking at it and like stealing all the thunder. So let's carry this. Someone help me carry this over and put it on the table. And this is overkill, but it's just 2x4s, right? So this gets back to David's question of how do you make sure stuff's level? So I built a scaffold and I have reference points for, I got the top where the table is and I got the floor. And I have roughly what I want my length to be and roughly what I want my width to be. And then I just play around with moving and clamping and screwing blocks to do attachment points. And one thing that I found out is, I'm going to zip up to the photo here. Here's Whippet in its scaffolding. And I made the mistake of clamping. The more clamps you put on, the more you'll screw it up. Because whenever you clamp, you make a flat spot. And so then you have this nice, beautiful curve and your hand feels, oh, flat, curve, ooh, flat. So on Whippet, I had multiple flat spots that I spent hours sanding out because I over clamped it. All you need to do is have it be in place. So if, for example, if I've got this curve coming up, I'm just going to literally spring clamp it. I'm not going to have a call. I don't want to have a block all the way across because then I'll make it be flat and I'll cause a flat spot. I just need to keep it positioned. And so I'm playing around with this to get the right form. And this is what we did the week of the, look what I thought of last night. We had multiple dry runs with just one ply, tweaking it around. Once I got it where I wanted it, I marked on the ply where the reference points were. And I took photos. Whippet wasn't bad because it's just one. But when you go back to, okay, I'm building this, and look, how did that all go together again? Because I have, when I'm bending the second one, I'm bending it in, the first one's in the scaffolding. So I have the second one in there, and I had to remember, well, how did it all interweave, and what was up and where's down, and you know, where's Wednesday, all that kind of stuff. So I take photos. And then when it comes to glue up, it's many hands. For the big stuff, it's many hands, right? So when we did Whippet, there were 4 of us, and it took 4 of us, because by the time you glue it, so we roll the glue, it's on the floor, we're rolling the glue on both sides of the plies. And a really key thing here, this is Richard's trick, you wrap it in craft paper. So the craft paper, wrap it, Scotch tape that. The big thing is it's going to keep any glue squeeze out from sticking to the bag, because this is hard enough to get it out of the bag once it's dry, because now I've got to like unscrew this thing from the wood. It's not easy. If there was any screw out, I'd be hosed. So the paper keeps everything contained, and the paper keeps all the plies together. So when it comes time to clean up the edges, everything's aligned for the most part. I mean, there's a little bit off, but it's amazing how tight it keeps stuff together.
Did you have squeeze out issues where
A little bit on the edges, but it was all within the bag. I mean, you can see.
nothing in and of the face is what you're saying?
Correct. So you can see here, this is, I ripped the bag off, and you can see there's a little bit of the paper stuck because I had a little bit of squeeze out, but hit it with the scraper blade and you're done. Yep.
Like, what width are you bringing them down to? You bring them down to finished width before you're putting them in the bag, or you kind of?
Well, it's kind of sculptural, so there really isn't a finish width. It's like whatever. Yeah, but I got them kind of where I wanted, and I lost maybe 1/4 of an inch. And then I'm looking at it, it's like, oh, I want this to taper, so let's take the spoke shave and taper it. So, but it's not I'm definitely not following a blueprint. It's not that kind of woodworking. Okay, so yeah, so get the glue on, wrap it in paper, put it in the bag, get it back in the form, suck out the air. So we will, I'm not going to do it for real, but we'll do a dry run. Oh, I forgot one other thing, diversion, sorry. My customer told me about this book, A Splintered History of Wood. Oh, yeah. If you want a great read over the holidays, this thing is fantastic. It's a history of wood. It's fascinating. So anyway, put it on your read list. David, you're a librarian. You read it, right? Yeah. It's great. Anyway, okay. So I'm going to put my computer down so I don't break it, and I'll need some help. Yep.
When you get the entire thing glued up and into the bag, is it heavy? Or do you use lots and lots and lots of glue? Seems like it'd be
It's heavy. Okay. I mean, Willis's question was, once it's all glued up, isn't this heavy? And yeah, it's heavy. I'm rolling glue on both sides. I'm rolling it like the consistency if I'm putting paint on a wall. It's that wet. I mean, you want to have wet to wet. If I just glued one ply and not the other, I probably would have adhesion issues. But yeah, back to many hands, because you got the boa constrictor, you got to get back into its cage. That's true. It softens them. Okay, so I'm going to and we're not going for total duplicity of the form. I just want to give you the concept. And here, like, I don't even have this clamped. It's just rests there. That's all I need. Just let it rest. Okay, so let's take, someone help me put these, oops, I'm dropping my mic. I need a helper. Let's stack those on top of that. Okay, let's take our netting. Somewhere over there, there's some masking tape, I think. Nope, just on one.
That's over your craft paper.
Correct, yeah. Craft paper first, and the netting, you don't have to get real fussy. And that should be good enough. They'll get us close enough to the end. I mean, air's gonna travel, so it'll find a way out. Let's go around there. Okay, so then let's stick that in the bag. Richard, can I get you to help? Because you've done this. I mean, again, it's gonna be multiple people, but you've helped on the wrapping side. Yeah. Yeah. All right, so that's there. So I've got the nipple up against the netting. Whoops. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, no, like it's more hands the better. Super. Okay, that should be good. Now, what form did I have again? Huh. Look at my model, maybe. We came in, whoops, that came off. Let me do this. Is this still on? The mic's still on? Right. Okay, so now I'm going to come up here and then oh, yeah, okay. That makes sense. Okay, then give me a twist other way. Okay, and then push it in. Or maybe not the other way. Yeah, just hold that there. And then one more flip. I do, could put it under there. The bench had 16 layers. That was rock solid. I did that coffee table I did with, I think 10. I probably should have used 13 or so. That was a little on the shy side. It worked, but it wasn't quite as robust as I would have hoped. That I did myself. I didn't want to burden my mates with that. I mean, it's not that long because you got the roller and there, you know, you just, it was probably 20 minutes. But again, the glue, you've got 6 hours plus of open time. So it's not the typical, oh, panic, it's going to set. Oh, I was too nervous to be worried about my attention span because this, again, this is the first time I did this. and it was the mystery, hold that there. You go all this work and then you come back the next day and it's like, either I've got some really cool firewood or it turned out. And we took it out and it's like, shit, it actually worked, you know, it worked. Yeah, okay, so that is probably, you can, it's variable depending on how much catalyst you put into the resin. I think the mixtures that we were doing, it's overnight. I mean, you know, it's rock solid in the morning. We just turn off the lights, come back the next day, and presto bango, it's done. Okay, so now let's suck the air out of this bad boy. Plug it in. Well, we got one down there that has a multi port. Oh, wait, I can get you, Richard, you can move it all you want. Not really. Again, this kind of gets into the over clamping. It's done. And now, I mean, you can go back and you can tweak, and I'll talk about tweaking, but you asked about, the question was, do you have to massage? I thought I did. I was looking at something, I was like, oh, that's not a good curve. So I started clamping it, and it's like, shit, it was a good curve. Now you put a flat spot in it, you wrecked it. So the easiest is,
I was thinking more like the little creases, but they're so minor that.
you're good to go. Yeah. And typically I would have with it, these plies are fairly all well aligned, but when it's in that paper wrap and taped up, they're not going anywhere. They're going to all be aligned. That was back to the question of, you know, how much oversight you have to do. So, I mean, that's it.
So back to that paper then. So you need to leave a little slot with that paper so you have, for it to move, or?
It'll find a way, because yeah, like you can see here, it's obviously the outside and the inside lengths are different because I'm going around a curve. So it's going to squish that way. And this gets back to one of the advantages of gluing both sides is, you know, Richard said it makes it more pliable, but it also makes it more slippery. So stuff is going to move around and it finds its way. So embarrassingly, that's it. I mean, I've got more, but that's the basic concept.
Could you just put your clamps on the bag and get rid of your flat spots?
Could do. Yeah, I could. Yeah, I could. And I'll talk about, I got a slide kind of get into that. That's a good point. Again, the key is don't over clamp it and don't overthink it. The form is what nature's going to go. If you try to curve something that's not right, it's not going to curve that way. You know, it's just the way it is. Flat on the bottom. Well, yeah, yes and no. I mean, again, if I get to, let's go back to, Whippet was pretty simple in that I got two, oops, what happened to the picture? Oh. No signal. Let me go to the.
Do we have an IT guy?
Oh, here, I used to be one. Oh.
Is the plug on the back of the projector?
Yeah, did we knock that off? Okay, so we have questions around the reference points and alignment. So on here, It touches the floor here. It touches the floor here. I've got wedge blocks in there to keep it from rocking. This little tail piece that I had sticking below my form, and I just whacked it off level. So I make the form where the bottom is above the top of the bench, so I have negative space I'm working into. Same thing here. This curve, the curve actually goes below the floor, but I just leveled it off so it has a flat spot. And then it's attached. The bench has a bolt from the top of this ribbon into it, and there's a little ear here that has a threaded insert into that ribbon. So you got to get your reference points, but it's kind of sculptural, so you can get really creative. This guy has a lot more reference points because now each ribbon where it hits the floor, I got to keep it from rocking, and the ribbons are attached in the center where they cross. This was a lot of work getting that all level, and then trying to get the glass, I think it's within, I do everything in metric. My corners are within 3 millimeters height of each other. So that's pretty darn good.
So that form, when you were done, was so rigid that it didn't comply to like moving it and settling things.
Well, that gets back to the number of plies question. This one did have a little spring to it. If I would have redone this, when I redo this, I will do it with more plies. But what's strange on here was with the weight of the tabletop, it made it strong. It's like, it's kind of springy, but then once it had even weight, it was like, okay, now it's rigids up, for if that's a word.
It's safely not rocky.
No, it's not rocky. Yeah, and again, you got to make sure I've got, and the top is just balanced. There's no, I don't have any glue or anything like that. It's just gravity. And yeah, you're not going to stick your feet up on it, but that's not what it's made for. It's made to look at.
With the bench and the seat and the bench and the bolts into the ribbon, was there the ply, all those plies strong enough to hold like a
Oh, I had a
75-pound person to sit on?
Oh yeah, that's definitely that. The bench is rock solid. You can get 2 people on it and it doesn't move.
And you said that was 15
16 is an inch thick. 16 plies, a 16th of an inch thick.
And how many bolts?
2.
2. Wow.
Well, because it's sitting,
Yeah. Amazing.
it's sitting on the bench is resting on the ribbons.
Oh, I see.
And the bolt is just, I got a bolt here holding the ribbon to the bench, and I have a little ear tab that bolts into the face just to keep it from tipping.
But it's sitting on the ribbon.
It's sitting on the ribbon. The
Okay.
ribbon's holding it.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, Craig, I remember this from the show very well. And the question everyone wanted to know, and I'm sure you've heard it, how do you do this?
Okay, so now we'll get into the tricks. So we got through the basics, right? Okay, so now cleaning up and shaping. We talked about this a little bit. I peel it off. Again, you come back the next day and it's like, it's a miracle it worked. I've done this now 3 times, well, a couple times, because with the coffee table, there were multiples. I've never had a failure. I mean, it works. It's simple. So I unwrap the paper, and on Whippet, I started with a body grinder, like thinking that would help. No, just made a mess. And it wasn't even. Spoke shaves and block planes for the edges, a little bit of rasps in a couple spots, scrapers and sandpapers for the faces. Do it all by hand, because again, your eye's gonna flow the way nature wants your hands to flow, right? So cleanup was actually pretty simple. Other tricks is tapers. So the lamp, the plies, the ribbons aren't the same thickness. They're wedges, they get thinner. Just like on, going way back, that arch on this table, you can see it's thinner at the top and thick in the middle, the Monty Python Brontosaurus joke that my wife will get because she's on the phone. So to do that tapering, I've got, I got to go back to that one thing. Hang on, but we'll get to this first. I got the outer plies are the full length, and then the inner plies, I do my math and I just divide, and they're increments shorter. So if I've got 5 plies, full length, the fourth one is, I'm going to look at Willis, our mathematician, it's 4/5, another one's 3/5, and then 2/5. So they're shorter and shorter, and I just take a belt sander and I feather them to nothing. And so then you lay them all together, and bingo, you get this beautiful taper. You can't even see where the seams are. And that was one thing I really liked about Whippet is, and what I like about this commercial veneer, I'm putting it comes from the veneer supplier, the way it was sliced off the log. And it's sliced, there's no kerf, there's no sawdust. So you put those plies together and it's the original tree. I'm rebuilding it in the same order that it came off of the tree. So I'm rebuilding the tree just in a different form. So it's the visibility of the edge seams, it's hard to see because it just all blends together because you got light grain with light grain, and it's following its pattern for the most part. Another thing I forgot to mention that I didn't realize, but it was a cool thing. When I did the lamp, it's a skinny stuff. It's skinny width. So not only did I have it curling spiral, the wood actually became concave. So the insides, these faces, none of the faces are flat. The outside is convex and the inside is concave, which is a really cool effect that I didn't plan for, but it's a really cool effect because now I'm bending in 3 dimensions. So that, what? Put that on CAD, yes. Where's Ed? He could do that, right? The lamp, I think these were 3/4 of a 5/8 of an inch at the bottom and maybe 3/8 at the top. So I'm probably working, if I remember right, 6/8 plies. Okay. So the cord is embedded in one of the plies. So, and this is, if I would do it over, I would do it over. So I made half of the ribbon, and then with the trim router, I routed a channel, which was a pain in the butt. And then I put in the cord and I had to put a little bit of hot melt in to keep it following up. And then I glued the other plies over that half. If I would do it over again, I would go for it in one fell swoop, and my middle plies would be split, and I would just lay them in with the cord, glue all that crap together, wrap it up well with masking tape and the craft paper, and just be done with it. Because it was fussy doing the cord. But
I got a question. You're saying that the actual plies are thinner and thicker. I mean, thicker at one end and thinner.
the middle plies here, I've got the 2, if I remember correctly, there were 8 plies. 4 plies, the 2 outer plies are the full thickness top to bottom. The 4 inner plies, one's 3/4 of the height, one's half the height, one, it's shorter heights. And then with the belt sander, I'm turning them into wedges. So I've got a wedge up against the wedge up against the wedge, so that angle of the wedge just continues from one ply to the next.
So aren't you exposing the end grain of the plies as you?
No, because the outer plies are the full length, and the outer plies aren't wedged. They're the full thickness. That makes sense?
You lost me. I thought I misunderstood what you said at the beginning.
Okay.
The inside plate.
Yeah. Here, let's do an example.
How long was that
The bevel is, it depends on how long the ply is. So, okay, so if I'm doing the lamp, I got inner and the outer ply, they're gonna be the full normal ply, top to bottom. And now if I'm gonna make wedges, let's say I cut this one, the bottom one is 3 feet long, and then I would feather with the belt sander 1.5 feet. And then I'd make the next ply 6 feet long, and I would feather from the end of this feather to the tip. So the feathers over, one feather starts where the next feather ends. So before I glue it up, yeah. So if you looked at it all stacked together flat, you would see it'd be a wedge shape. That make sense?
Single taper or some double taper?
You could do double if you wanted to be skinny on both ends. And on mine, they were all single because it's bottom fat getting skinnier as they go up. Okay? What? No, I hope not.
There's a lot of those lamp crap, and they just.
Well, that's why I buy a good one, so I don't have to worry about a crap cord getting. Nothing's going to happen to it. It's fully encased in the wood. There's nothing. Seriously, what's going to happen to it?
The insulation will crack and short out in the middle.
I'll be long dead. Someone else's problem. Okay, so anything else on the tapers? Okay, whips and curls. So often I wanted to get my ends to have a little bit more of a flare to them, right? So there were 2 ways of doing that. One is, and this kind of got into over clamping, but this was less dangerous. Where are my visual aids? I make just scrap blocks. I can turn this off. And then at the end, I would just clamp this on the end to give it extra curl. Or I would just grab the bag and say, oh, I want this to bend. So I spring clamp and have the bag do the bending. So you can do a lot of just nuances with how you want your ends to turn out, just by forcing some of the more curl you would get naturally. David?
So if you want to separate, you just obviously don't put glue between those.
That's the next section. Okay, anything else on the whips and the curls? Okay, so everybody wants bifurcations. Okay, so this was a lot of fun. And I think it looks super cool. Well, now you can see the construction technique. So the bottom of the bench is sitting on the top of the ribbon. I got a flat spot there, and there's a through bolt from the ply into a screw, a threaded insert in the bench bottom. But it's the ribbon that's supporting it. The hardware is just keeping it together. So I had this bifurcation. I glued half of the plies the full length. The other half, I stopped at my bifurcation point. So and let's see, I think, I gotta remember what one was what. Yeah, this guy got glued the whole way. The arching up over the top of the bench was glued. The glue stopped here. And these all went into the bag dry. Okay, so it's still going in the bag. It's still going on the scaffolding. But when I take it out of the bag, it's just flopping in the wind because there's nothing on it. Okay, so then I manually glued and spring clamped the heck out of that lower whip. So I had, I used rollers, syringes and then a piece of chalk line, the heavy duty thread, not thread, string. And I just like flossed this stuff down, and I was able to, floss all the glue down into the open joints. And then I spring clamped the heck out of it. And that was problematic because I had some gaps, and there's got to be a better way. I haven't found it. I tried yesterday. I was like, oh, what if I put a bag, half in the bag, right? If I put the bag over the ends, and you can see on my bag, I've got this stupid double-sided tape that I'll never get off, because I thought I could like double-side tape the bag, slip the bag up to here with tape, clamp it, suck the air out. I thought that would work. Not a chance. Didn't even get close. Because I thought even if the pump's running all the time, if it's got enough draw to pull it in, but I couldn't even get it to pull it.
That's what Kaufman.
How do they make vacuum tape? Is that thick stuff?
Well, but I think it's not just getting the seal, it's the wood itself. Because I can seal all the way along the wood, but it's just a big straw. I'm gonna suck, but again, I'm not giving up because this is a really cool effect, that bifurcation, but this was a pain in the butt doing the spring approach. Now, I think if I did it over again, I'd get, you get better every time, but it wasn't perfect.
Get two bags, and could you get one fully inside the other? So the tail would go out and be in a bag, and it'd be inside a larger bag, and they'd all get vacuumed together.
Then it would crush everything because the outer bag would smush everything together, if I'm following you.
Imagine you have that bag.
Yep.
The one you got there. You have another one that is smaller in its dimensions, and it's at the last 2 feet only inside of it. So you take your other piece. That bag would have to have another dimension to it where you could pull it, you could pull it in the Z-axis. That doesn't make sense. You know what I'm saying? Because you'd have to vacuum the whole thing.
If
other bag would collapse. It would still collapse.
if I had a forked bag, if I had a bifurcated bag, which I suppose I could make,
For sure.
that would work. But again, I complained about this, but it worked. And the end of, yeah, it was a lot of spring clamps, so we have a lot of spring clamps, so that wasn't a problem.
Wait, couldn't you take the end of this bag and invert it at the end and make your split bag? That work? You pull it back, you pull the end back into itself, and now you've got two little bags.
What about my other bifurcation? I got a fork.
You have a Y. Yeah, you only get a Y.
Yeah, I got a Y. I'm trying to put a condom on a, what, I don't want to go there. Yeah, but again, I want to keep playing around with it. There's got to be a simpler way. But it was a cool approach. Okay, so now kind of the last things, I got a couple things on scaffolding. So this was super simple. The scaffolding for the lamp. I just put a pole up in the air. So I got a pole. It's a pipe clamp pipe. So it's mounted on a board, screwed to my table, and then I got a bracket going over to my shelf, and I'm just wrapping around, and I have standoff blocks. You can see just a block of wood with a hole drilled in it that slides over the pole, and that's where I'm clamping my plies to. It was super simple. And really versatile because, like the coffee table, when I'm building this, I need to have as I'm making my second, third, and fourth ply, I need my other, or ribbons, I need to have my other ribbons in place so I know what I'm referencing off of, because all this stuff has got to come together in the end. Okay, so the other scaffolding, which gets away from this totally freeform thing, but it was fantastic. Okay, so I made these 2 chairs. They're at the upholsterer right now. They were supposed to be ready by the day, but they're not. But anyway, I got 2 chairs and I got left and right curved arms. And they're curved in multiple dimensions. So how do I make not one, but I got to make a left and a right that match, and I got to make two chairs that match. So it ended up being, after a lot of thinking, pretty straightforward. So let me bring out this guy. So it's a similar concept. Yeah. I mean, it is simple. It's simple. I have my plies. I put them in the bag. You can see the plies in the bag. I have, here's this reference block is the crown, the apex of the arm. And I can rotate this to go left and right. So I have my left side and my right side. And then what I would do is, can somebody be my clamp-o-matic? Ooh, I should get you a clamp here. These plies are, oops, these plies are cracked, but it'll give you the concept. Oh, use the round in the, yeah. Yeah, tighten that up. So my plies were cut a set length. They go on here where they reference the outside of the block. So that's set. I've got reference lines. They go in this arm tail piece that slides on my board. And then I crank this, oops. And this is a lot harder when you got 16 of them too, I'll promise you that. But conceptually, you get it. That goes there, that gets clamped together. I suck out the air, the arm dries. As long as I have the same length, the same reference points, they're going to be identical or close enough. And then I just flip it over and I do the exact same thing on the other side, and I got left and right. They're joined at the top with a, this was a hard project. There's nothing straight, right? So these back pieces are curved. So that was all spoke shaved by hand. And then there's a block at the top that is splined to pull, to join to the top of the arms. And then making it harder is in these open spaces, there are curved blocks that are upholstered. So those blocks are curved in 3 dimensions. But that's all just by hand, you know, spoke shaved, they're solid out of pine. And then the upholster is upholstering over them. But this approach, I can pretty easily do a multi-dimensional curve and get it repeatable, like repeating in the forms. And again, to make a form like that, I could probably do it, but not so easy. Yeah, similar, exactly. Yeah, yeah. It's the fixture. Yeah, because the steam bed, if you got the fixture and you do the same thing with the same dimensions, it's going to be as close as would let you get to be close. So I think that's all I had from a material perspective. I have no idea what time it is. Oh, so we're okay. Other questions? You got to try it because it's so, I hate saying easy, but it is. But it's easy for what you get out of it, from the, look what you can do just with some crap lumber from Home Depot in a $185 plastic bag, you know?
Where did you get this again? What was the name of the company?
Vacuum pressing systems. They're out of Maine. Oh no, the wood. The wood is certainly wood. Out of East Aurora, New York. just south of, I visited them once, so they're south of Buffalo. Certainly would, yep,
You use ash, right?
yep.
Would another kind of, like maple, would it more?
Yeah, so I can talk about the different woods I've used. I'm a little bit restricted by, I'm trying to get the stuff that's, you know, the special thickness. So not, they don't make everything, stop it, special thickness.
Special meaning you want at least a 16th because you.
Yeah, I mean, normal veneer is, you know, 20th or whatever. I mean, you could use it, but you'd be, you'd have more glue than wood, right? So this is ash. The seat is also ash. That's the thermal ash, the stuff that they heat up and it caramelizes. I haven't found veneer like that, but that's the wood. This is white oak, quarter sawn, which looks great, but it was problematic because with all those curves, you get the flex to laminate off from the main structure. So it was hard to get the faces smooth. You know, we're used to working with white oak quarter sawn where it's flat, but if you try bending it, all that stuff goes boing, boing, and it was tough. I had a lot of like terry out type stuff when I'm scraping. What? It's the same way, yeah. So like in the future, I learned, okay, maybe not. The lamp was walnut. That was a breeze to work with. That was wonderful. It formed well. Like I said, I got that concave convex thing going on, and it cleaned up great. There was no tear out. It was super.
How do you clean up the edges?
Spoke shave, mostly spoke shave and a block clean.
I thought Roger was BSing when he told me there was been 5.
Yeah, it's Wigglewood. Well, you can buy it. Okay, this stuff comes 3/8 or 1/8 inch, and you get long tube or short tube because it's 4x8 sheet, and normally it bends into a short tube. So I'm bending it. I got an 8-footer and I'm bending it. And the non-bending is the 4-foot way. You can also buy it long tube where it bends the 4-foot way and it's rigid the 8-foot way.
So the fact that what makes it bendable is that the grain is going.
I'm not sure exactly because it's an uneven, it's 3 plies. You glue 2 of these together and it's rock solid. That's the magic on it.
There's a very thin ply in the
Middle, yes.
and then the 2 plies on the outside run the same way.
Yep.
Makes it super wiggly like that.
And like regular plywood has, but you never see 3 plies on a sheet of plywood. It's always, and they alternate. Yeah. This stuff is wonderful to work with. I mean, you can do so much so easily if you're doing like that arched table where, you know, this isn't obviously showroom quality. I mean, you're gonna veneer it and, you know, you got to cover it. But I did that same belt sander feathering thing on that ribbon table or that arch table where I think I had probably 10 plies in the center and it tapered down to 6 or 7, whatever it was on the ends.
Kind of a freeform form.
Yeah.
For some plant bending, you just do, I think 3 layers stacked up like that. It turned really rigid, like you said.
Yep.
Filled my plant holes through it. It was turned a hard project into use.
Yeah, it's wonderful stuff.
When you bevel that, you just do it on one side?
Oh, feather? Yeah, you could do both sides, but there's no reason to. I just do it on one. Yeah, just put it on the bench, clamp it down, take the belt sander and grind away. I've tried running it through a wedge through the wide belt sander. That works, but it's more work than it's worth. Belt sander's just as efficient. All right. All right. Well, thanks for your interest.